coach Phil Jackson is and was a racist, and we are here to talk about it right after this bumper. This is going to be a good one, guys. I can't wait to tune in. What's happening, everybody? It's Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell because we upload every single day. Scottie Pippen, the Hall of Famer, the six-time champion, Michael Jordan's running mate, says that his former coach, Phil Jackson, was a racist, and he says he got some receipts to prove it, that Phil Jackson was a racist. Now, Scottie was on the Dan Patrick Show this past weekend, or yesterday, actually, and they were talking about, things that we learned about in The Last Dance. Scottie Pippen is out here promoting a book. He's got a book coming out in November. He's got a bourbon that's out. He's trying to do any and everything he can to promote his products that are currently out. But we all know when The Last Dance came out last year during the pandemic, Scottie Pippen wasn't a fan of The Last Dance. It made him look like a lot of things that he feels like he's not. Once again, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, guys. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. And leave your thoughts in the chat on Scottie Pippen. But now he is saying his former coach, Phil Jackson, was a racist. And the first thing that Scottie pointed to was 1994, after Michael Jordan had did his brief retirement to go play baseball. Scottie Pippen was the star of the team. Scottie Pippen was the guy. Scottie Pippen was the number one option. Scottie Pippen was leading this team to a 53-win team, leading this team to the Eastern Conference Finals, leading this team to all the great things that they were doing in 1994. And there was a play at the end of the game. We all saw The Last Dance. The play at the end of the game, there was a rookie Tony Kukoc. There was Scottie Pippen. Phil Jackson drew up the play for Tony Kukoc, who was a rookie, who was a European, who was, this supposed to be this great sensation. Remember, Jordan and Pippen took it to Tony Kukoc during the Olympics, but they drew up this play for Tony, and Scottie didn't check in the game. They called the timeout. Scottie checked himself out of the game during this play. And because of that, Scottie is saying that is proof enough to show that his former coach, Phil Jackson, was a racist. I'm going to read to you some of what Scottie Pippen had to say. So this was on the Dan Patrick Show. On the Dan Patrick Show, like I said, Scottie Pippen says that Phil Jackson drew up, he says, by saying, so he said it was a racial move by drawing up the play for Tony Kukoc. Not that just it was a disrespect to the superstar on the team, not just the fact that he was the next in line. Jordan's gone. It's Scottie's team, but he said it was a racial move to draw up that play for Tony Kukoc. And Dan Patrick, being the journalist that he is, he says, so are you saying Phil Jackson's a racist? And Scottie says, oh, yeah. He said, yeah, Phil is. He says Phil is a racist. And not only did he use that moment, that incident, because, that was a thing. I'm going to read you the quote. That said, it comes from Scottie Pippen in his interaction with Phil Jackson during that time in 1994. It says, quote, I don't think it's a mystery. You need to read between the fine lines. It was my first year playing without Michael Jordan. Why wouldn't I be taking that last shot? I've been through all the ups and downs, the battles of the Pistons, and now you're going to insult me and tell me to take it out? Like, be the inbound passer. I thought it was pretty low blow. It was a pretty low blow. I felt like it was an opportunity to give Kukoc a rise. It was a racial move to give him a rise. After all I've been through with this organization, now you're going to tell me to take the ball out and throw it to Tony Kukoc? You're insulting me. That's how I felt. Remember, Scottie made no bones about this. That's how he felt. Remember, he didn't even check into the game. And when he said it was a racial move, he confirmed with Dan Patrick, yes. Now I'm reading this, and the audio is on Twitter. I'm reading this from Yahoo Sports. It says, after Pippen said that he has no problem calling Jackson a racist, he used Jackson's relationship with Kobe Bryant. Now, this is very interesting. This is more receipts by Scottie Pippen. He uses his relationship with Kobe Bryant as an example of how he took advantage of black players. Jackson coached Kobe Bryant from 1999 to 2004. and then left the team and wrote The Last Season, A Team in Its Search of a Soul. He wrote a book about the tumultuous 2003-2004 Lakers that was very critical of Bryant. Then he returned to coach in 2005. And then obviously him and Kobe went and won 2 more championships. In this book, I mean, this is what Scottie had to say. Quote, do you remember Phil Jackson left the Lakers and then wrote a book on Kobe Bryant and then came back to coach him? I mean, who would do that? You name someone in professional sports that would do that. I think he tried to expose Kobe in a way and that he shouldn't have. You're the head coach. You're the guy who sits in the locker room and tells the players this is a circle and everything stays within the circle. And that's what a team is about. But then you as a head coach open it up, and now you go out and try to belittle at the time one of the greatest players of all time. Now, Scottie has some validity to this, because I don't know if you guys have ever read that book or are aware of that book, but in that book, Phil Jackson calls Kobe Bryant very selfish. Like, he calls him a selfish player. You know what I'm saying? And you got to remember, this is Kobe trying to figure out himself and trying to figure out his career post-Shaq. Right, so we're talking 2003. We're talking a year after Shaq. I mean, right, the year Shaq left, 03, 04, and you write this book because Kobe's trying to figure out what's going on. Scottie's like, no, you this is a locker room. This is supposed to be sacred. You're supposed to be the head coach. You're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to be making these things happen. And you're gonna write a book degrading a player? Like, no, degrading a black player on top of that. So I remember what you did to me 10 years earlier, 94. I remember when Michael left and you wrote up a play for Tony Kukoc. And now that was a racist, what Scottie's saying. Now, leave your thoughts in the comments. Mike says it's not racist. I don't know if it's racist or not, but it's interesting. It is interesting. It is very interesting because he's using what he's using as his receipts. He's using the play for Tony Kukoc in 94 and the incident with the book, because he did call Kobe selfish in the book. Now let's continue reading what Scottie also had to say. It says, quote, you know, all those cameras. So Dan Patrick goes on to ask Scottie, he was like, man, like, how can Phil be racist when, like, he's written up plenty of plays for Michael, and Michael even passed it to Steve Kerr. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Michael, it says Patrick brought up about how Michael Jordan didn't have a problem passing the ball to Steve Kerr for a game-winning shot in the 98 NBA Finals, but Pippen wasn't having it, telling Patrick he doesn't think that's a fair comparison at all. So comparing Scottie passing the ball to Tony Kukoc versus Michael passing the ball to Steve Kerr. Said it's not fair, and here's why. Pippen believes Jordan only said he would pass the ball to Kerr because there were cameras filming in the huddle, and even thinks Michael rehearsed the moment ahead of time. Ooh, see, this is where Scottie's getting like messy. Like, this is starting to get like real reality TV show-ish, and I'm going to get into why I believe Scottie Pippen's doing all of this, not just about Phil, about Michael, about Kevin Durant. There's a bigger picture to this. There's a reason why he's going after all these people. It says, quote, you know all those cameras who was sitting in the huddle, who they were working for? You know who Michael was speaking to, right? That was planned. That he was speaking to cameras. That wasn't speaking out of what was going to happen in the play. That was speaking to the camera. Had Stockton not come down and double Michael, trust me, that building, that was building his own documentary, because he knew he was controlling the cameras. All of those cameras were working basically for Michael Jordan, not the Chicago Bulls. That was not naturally spoken. That was rehearsed. And then he goes on Twitter and says, I'm just answering the questions y'all asking me. You wanted the headlines, you got them. Dig deeper to find out why I actually said what I said instead of framing it and questioning to get clicks. That's where, okay, so let's recap everything that we're talking about right here, right? Let's recap everything. Scottie Pippen first calls Phil Jackson racist. And then because he was mad that Phil drew up a play for Tony Kukoc and didn't drop the play for Scottie Pippen. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Hit the thumbs up button. So then Dan Patrick asked, well, Phil drew up a play for Steve Kerr, and Michael was willing to pass it to Steve Kerr. And Scottie says, no. Phil drew up the play for Michael Jordan. Jordan passed the ball and said all of those things he said in the huddle because he knew cameras were rolling. He knew he was going to put out a documentary because this was 98. This was going to be after the 6th championship. This is also Michael knowing Phil was getting fired. Michael also knowing that he is going to retire. Michael also knowing that at some point, somewhere down the line, he was at the time considered the greatest basketball player ever, and he wants to put out this documentary. So He's going to say whatever he needs to say to make him look good for this documentary. That's what Scottie is saying. He said it wasn't the same. Phil actually drew this up for Tony Kukoc. Phil didn't draw this up for Steve Kerr. Phil drew this up for Michael. And so, that is why Scottie is saying that wasn't the same. That is why Scottie's saying this all wasn't the same. These aren't the same things. Now, let's dive into, is this a racist act by Phil Jackson? These things that Phil's doing, the thing calling Kobe selfish, drawing up a play for Tony Kukoc, are these racist acts? Because these are the only receipts Scottie Pippen presented. He said the fact that he wanted to rise the profile Tony Kukoc, and the fact that he gave he called Kobe selfish, which a lot of people call it. Black people call Kobe selfish. Hell, I mean, R.I.P. Kobe is one of my favorite players ever. I have a ton of Kobe posters in my room and stuff. But a lot of black people thought Kobe Bryant was a selfish basketball player. Kobe Bryant teammates thought he was a selfish basketball player. You know, rest in peace, Kobe. But before he passed away, Ash Smush Parker. Go look up some clips from Smush Parker calling Kobe a selfish basketball player. That doesn't sound racist. That just sounds like, I mean, maybe it was doing too much. Maybe as a coach, you don't say that. But is that racist? I think it's a stretch. That's what we call a stretch, Scottie. Yeah, I don't, that's not enough evidence to call Phil Jackson racist. Now, can Phil Jackson be racist? I mean, he's like 80 years old, maybe. I mean, any American man that lived in America that's like over the age of 65, 70, there's probably a high chance at some point you were racist. Like, I mean, I'm not one to just sit here and say, I don't know Phil Jackson. I don't know what is going on. But that evidence that Scottie presented wasn't strong enough to call Phil Jackson racist. The fact that he called Kobe selfish, and the fact that he drew up a play for Tony Kukoc instead of you, that don't sound racist. It just sound like a man. Like maybe he's, I don't know, maybe gossips. I don't know. It doesn't sound racist. It doesn't sound racist. And the thing about the Tony Kukoc play, Scottie doesn't check in the game. Remember, we saw it all in The Last Dance. Scottie doesn't check in the game, and Kukoc makes the shot. So Kukoc actually made the shot, like, to win the game. So that looked like good coaching. It looked like a smart play on the coach's behind. What about when Phil made his remarks about the NBA dress code, and then he compared the now, okay, so Chris brings up some good evidence, right? Because I almost forgot about this. Phil did talk about the NBA dress code and the way guys like Allen Iverson and the guys used to wear like baggy jeans and all that stuff, and then they end up changing it, right? And now that's why the NBA is like when they walk into the game, it's like a runway, right? Like they're going out and they're being real stylish, and it's evolved into that. But when they used to wear like hip hop style clothing in the early 2000s, Phil Jackson wasn't a fan of it. Phil Jackson also, now we can dive into this, called LeBron James's crew, the Rich Paul, the Maverick Carters, and the all those guys that LeBron like does business with, called him his posse, right? Like, now I do remember these things. Shout out to Chris Childs. You brought up some interesting points. That is true. We can't let Phil off the hook for that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if that's still considered racist. That's leaning more towards evidence than what Scottie said. That's leaning more towards racist evidence than what Scottie said. Scottie said he drew up a play for Tony Kukoc that I didn't like because I was a starter team, and he called Kobe Bryant selfish. I don't know if that's racist, though, Scottie. I'm not sure if that's racist. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know if that's strong enough evidence. The LeBron James posse comment and the being critical of the hip-hop dress code, I think that's more towards like some racist stuff than drawing up a play for Tony Kukoc. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. But I'm gonna dive into this. This is what shout out to Sean Hobson. He says, I'm rolling with Scottie. His evidence shows a clear bias, but does not necessarily show racism. Then again, how do we show evidence or racism when the racist is in question knows how to handle himself publicly? I mean, that's true, because maybe there are times or were times in a locker room setting. I mean, you got to think, Scottie played for Phil for years. We're talking about like a decade, right? Like, he played for Phil Jackson for a very, very long time. So therefore, he was around Phil Jackson for a very, very long time, like years and years. around this man, hearing this man, seeing what he talks, doing his mannerisms, hearing what he had to say, doing all these different kind of things. So maybe there was some racial empathy in taking place in the Bulls locker room. I've never heard that before, right? Like in all, like the Last Dance, it wasn't mentioned. Scottie didn't mention it. I mean, maybe he did, and maybe they cut it, right? Because Michael Jordan had all executive order, and he let it be known that he left the Bulls because they got rid of Phil. So maybe Scottie did mention in the Last Dance that Phil was a racist, and they just cut that tape, right? Like, I have no idea. But this is the first time I've ever heard this before. Kobe had never said it before. Shaq had never said it before. Robert Horry, Brian Shaw, Derek Fisher, Steve Kerr, Michael Jordan. Like, none of these guys have ever said this before. This is the first time I've ever heard this. But we have had like little glimpse. The posse comment, the critical of the dress code, now the passing the ball and calling people selfish. I don't know if that's racist, but I could see a little inkling. I could see a little inkling in some of these different things that have taken place around around Phil Jackson. So who knows? But what I will get into now, let's talk more about Scottie, because Scottie has been on a rampage. Besides just calling Phil racist and being very critical of Michael Jordan, we all know. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button. We all know Scottie hated the Last Dance. Many of the ballers came in looking like, let's just say hood. We all know the posse comments wasn't racist. Blacks have made commercial. I mean, and I'm not like, and that's the thing. Like, that's for to each his own to the judge. Mike said it wasn't racist. Hadia, I don't want to mess up your name, but you're saying that's not racist? Like, these comments are not racist? I mean, I guess it's like an inkling. That's the only thing. Like, I'm trying, maybe I am reaching, but I'm trying to level with Scottie. I'm trying to see where Scottie's at. I'm trying to meet him halfway, right? But what I will say, though, Scottie has been on a rampage. For those who don't know, Scottie Pippen has been on a media tour because he has his book coming out, and it's available for pre-order right now, and it's coming out in November. It's called Unguardable. We all know, dating back to last April when The Last Dance aired, Scottie Pippen was not a fan of The Last Dance. The Last Dance painted a picture of Scottie Pippen that he never wanted to be painted of himself. Scottie Pippen, for the most part, before The Last Dance came out, for the people, at least in my age demographic, I'm 25. And so therefore I was born in 95. So I didn't see the first 3 championships of the Bulls. And I don't remember the last 3, right? But so all I knew of Scottie Pippen was Michael Jordan's sidekick. He won 6 championships. He was labeled as a top 50 player of all time. He's in the NBA Hall of Fame. He seems to have done well for himself, right? Like, now I knew about Larsa Pippen, his wife, and that was a whole different thing, but I never had any real negative thoughts of Scottie Pippen. So then The Last Dance comes out, and you learn Scottie Pippen's story. First, they build him up. They're like, man, he wasn't very good at basketball at first. He was the manager at Central Arkansas. He grew 6 inches one summer and then became the star of Central Arkansas, but turned into a first-round pick. Michael Jordan's running mate, boom, championships. But then they built him up to tear him down. And they didn't necessarily tear him down by making stuff up. They just tore him down with stuff that was facts. They tore him down with the facts. And the facts were, he did have a migraine before the Bulls, when the Bulls had the Pistons on the rope. He did have a migraine and couldn't play. And Michael Jordan and the Bulls lost. Pistons went on to win the championship. He did, after winning championships, he did sign a bad contract. 5 years, like $12 million. 5 years, $12 million? He did sign a bad contract and got mad about it and didn't want to play on it. Well, you signed the contract. Did nobody force you? Nobody put a gun to your head? There's free agency. You signed the bad contract. Michael didn't. Michael's making $30 million a year. When Michael came back to play for the Bulls, he said, they got to give me $30 million a year. So Scottie, he did sign a bad contract. He was mad about his contract. And so therefore, he decided to get an off-season surgery during the season because he wanted to enjoy his summer. These are coming straight out of his mouth. So he signed the bad contract. He was mad about the bad contract and decided to get an off-season surgery, a surgery he should have gotten right when the season was over. So therefore, he'd be ready for the beginning of the season. He gets the surgery at the beginning of the season. So he misses games throughout the season because he wanted to, quote, enjoy his summer. These are things that made Scottie look really, really bad. And then to put the icing on the cake, and I could, leave your thoughts in the chat if I'm forgetting anything. These are the things I haven't seen The Last Dance since it came out. But leave your thoughts in the chat. And then to put the icing on the cake, he didn't check into the game when the play was written up for Tony Kukoc. He didn't. He admitted it. He said, I was mad. And he talks about it once again. I was mad that they drew up the play for a rookie instead of drawing up the play for me. So he didn't check into the game. These are facts. These are things that come right out of Scottie's mouth. These aren't alternative facts, as one president used to say. These are alternative facts. These aren't opinions. These aren't things we're making up. These aren't things that the media spun in a way. These are the facts. And so when these things came out during the Last Dance, that Scottie was bad at managing, bad at signing contracts and was at times very selfish and very, just doing more about me instead of the team. It made Scottie look really bad. Like it made him look really, really bad. He said his family needed to eat. Yeah, but he still should negotiate. Like his family was eating prior to signing this deal. They can wait a little longer for him to get a bigger deal to eat. So these things, were like Scottie, like these things made Scottie look the way he looked, and he was not happy about it. And the reason why he wasn't happy about it is because he knew that Michael Jordan had final say over what was put into the documentary. And so from what, I don't want to put words in Scottie's mouth, but making Scottie look more like a villain makes Jordan look more like the hero. Like, look what I was dealing with. I was dealing with dysfunction in the front office with Jerry Krause, doing all this stuff, Jerry Krause and Phil fighting. I was dealing with dysfunction in the locker room because Dennis was out in Vegas once a week, and Scottie was mad about his contract and doing whatever he's doing. But somehow, some way, I was still able to overcome all of that and win 6 championships. That is the way that the Last Dance came out. That's the way it comes off. It's like I dealt with this the cocaine circus early in my career. I get Scottie, we're winning championships, but now he's disgruntled because he signed this bad deal. And then I have I have a GM and my head coach that I love are fighting and bickering back and forth. And somehow, some way, I was able to overcome all of that and win 6 titles. That is how the Last Dance came across. And Scottie was like, yo, that's not everything. Because remember, Michael Jordan had final executive say-so over what gets added and what gets cut. What gets added and what gets cut. What's allowed to stay in the doc and what words and statements are removed from the doc. So it's almost like just an autobiography, like a monologue. You know what I'm saying? Like a real documentary tells the whole picture. Where Scottie says, no. This documentary only told Michael's picture. We painted it the way Michael wanted to paint it. And so that is why he was upset with The Last Dance, the documentary The Last Dance. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. So, to combat what was put out in The Last Dance, Scottie's like, I'm going to write my own book called Unguardable or Unguarded. And I'm going to give you my version, Scottie Pippen's version of The Last Dance. I'm going to tell you what happened in the locker room. I'm going to tell you what really happened, what all took place, and coming from my perspective. You heard Michael's perspective, and he was a part of every championship winning team with the Bulls. Now it's time to hear Scottie's perspective. And so I say all of that to say this. In effort to sell books, because that's the end goal. Scottie has a book coming out, and he has a bourbon that is out. I don't know the name of the bourbon, but it's out right now. So in effort to sell books and bourbon, I am going to say controversial statements like Kevin Durant ain't LeBron James, and he ain't as good as LeBron James, and he let his team down in these playoffs. I'm going to say LeBron James won a championship and has never had any help. He's won 4 titles and never had any help. And I'm going to say Phil Jackson was a racist. Because what do these things do? What do these statements do? They get your response out of Kevin Durant. They get your response out of Stephen A. Smith. They get your response from Yahoo Sports, from Bleacher Report. They get your response from Kobe Bryant. They get your response from Scottie Pippen. They get your response from Scottie Pippen. They get your response from Kobe Bryant. They get your response from Scottie Pippen. They get your response from Yahoo Sports, from Bleacher Report. They get your response from from the Black Boss channel, from us, from me, from you? Because it keeps Scottie Pippen's name relevant. It gets a response from Charles Barkley, a guy he hates. Like, it keeps us talking. And the more we talk, the more people are likely to buy books and bourbon. That's Scottie's end goal, is to get you to buy books and to get you to buy bourbon. And it's working. I think it's working. I really do. Now, Chris Child says, yeah, Kevin Durant isn't as good as LeBron James. That's not the point. He said Kevin Durant didn't do what his team needed him to do in these playoffs. When James Harden was a shell of himself and Kyrie Irving was hurt, Kevin Durant had back-to-back 45-plus games in the Game 6 and Game 7 against a fully healthy Milwaukee Bucks team. So, yeah, obviously, you can say whether you think he's better than LeBron James or not right now, but to say he didn't do what his team needed him to do is just it's just not true. It's just controversial. And then that's when Kevin Durant said, Scottie, weren't you the one that didn't go in the game? Didn't you not go in the game when the play wasn't drawn up for you? He said that team followed Phil, not you. He said that team followed Phil, not you. It's pretty crazy. So Scottie is generating all of this buzz, all of these talking heads like me and you and all these people that like to talk basketball and want to know what's going on in the world of the NBA or former NBA players or whatever, all to draw up some sales for his books. He's been on with Yahoo Sports. He'll probably be on with First Take sometime this week. I mean, he was tweeting at First Take live during the show last week. Like he's well aware of what's going on right now. He's well aware that people, like I said, like me and you or whoever, are talking about what he's saying on the internet and what he's saying to Dan Patrick. It's all calculated. He's not a dumb man. Scottie Pippen's not a dumb man. So he understands the game. He understands what's taking place. He understands that if I say, I say something about Michael Jordan, especially me, like not just like a lot of people say stuff about Michael Jordan all the time. And like it goes in one ear and out the other. One ear and out the other about whatever they said about Michael Jordan. But if Scottie Pippen says something about Michael Jordan, I might want to listen. I might be tuned in because Scottie Pippen won 6 championships with Michael. If Scottie Pippen says something about Phil Jackson, I'm going to hear it out. Especially if he's calling the man racist. Especially if he is calling the man that he won 6 championships with, that Kobe Bryant won 5 championships with, that Shaquille O'Neal won 3 championships with. If he's calling that man racist, and none of these other players, these great Hall of Fame players, have ever said it, I might want to tune in. He says KD missed 6 shots in overtime. Come on, man. We're nitpicking now. Kevin Durant had like 48 in Game 7. He really made the game-winning shot. His foot was just on the line. The Nets will be playing in the Eastern Conference Finals right now, and the Bucks would be at home if his foot went on the line. So, yeah, if you want to nitpick, I mean, the man that played 50 minutes in back-to-back games. There's only 48 minutes in the NBA game. He had been playing in overtime. So, that is crazy. Scottie Pippen saying that Phil Jackson was a racist in his receipts. For those of you that tuned in, be sure to hit the thumbs up button to tune in late. We're talking about Scottie Pippen and what's taking place with him calling Phil Jackson a racist. And not just Phil Jackson a racist, but he also uses the fact that Phil Jackson made these comments about Kobe Bryant. And I also talked about why I believe Scottie Pippen is doing this. And I think he is mainly doing this to sell books and bourbon. He has been on a rampage for like 2 weeks now, talking about Kevin Durant, talking about his new book, talking about Michael Jordan, and now he's calling Phil Jackson a racist. Leave your thoughts in the chat. Do you believe Scottie? Sean Hobson already came out and said, yeah, he believes Scottie. You know what I'm saying? He said it's not hard to believe that a man over 70 that lives in America, a white man over 70 that lives in America, is racist. And I'm with you, Sean. It's not hard to believe. That is not a hard concept to, like, you don't have to pound that through my head at all. I'm just saying, and then he's like, how do you prove somebody's racist? Unless they do an openly racist act. And I'm like, yeah, you're also right about that. It's hard to prove somebody's racist. unless they just blatantly do an act that's just blatantly racist. But the examples that Scottie used just to me weren't strong enough. The example of drawing up a play for Tony Kukoc instead of him, especially when the play worked. The play for Tony Kukoc worked, guys. He hit the shot, they won the game. And calling Kobe Bryant selfish, well, plenty of we get a lot of empathy for Kobe because of the tragic accident. But when Kobe Bryant was alive, and when Kobe, especially during his playing days, a lot of people called Kobe Bryant selfish. Like they called him a selfish basketball player. Trust me, I know I was the biggest Kobe fan in the world. And they called him selfish. Plenty of people called him a selfish basketball player because of the way he played, because of how hard he was on teammates, because of the way he didn't always pass the ball. Like I remember the memes of a PlayStation controller, and the only button like Kobe Bryant, it was like a regular controller and then Kobe's controller, and all that was on Kobe's controller was the circle because circle was the shoot button. They said Kobe didn't pass. And he all he did was shoot. Trust me, I heard it all. So for Phil to say Kobe was selfish wasn't a stretch for a lot of people. A lot of people hell agreed with him. So, Dyra says, shout out to Dyra, man. He says Scottie is suffering from some kind of damage. Absolutely, Dyra. We dove into it. We dove into how the way Scottie was looked pre The Last Dance and post The Last Dance. Pre The Last Dance, like I said, for people like Dyra and myself, if you knew anything about Scottie Pippen, it was that he was the number one sidekick probably in the history of the NBA. He was a six-time champion. He was a Hall of Famer. He was a top 50 greatest player of all time. He was a defensive stopper. He was a guy that can handle the ball, a scorer for you when you need it. And even when Michael Jordan left, the Bulls went from 55 wins to 53 wins and was in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's what I knew about Scottie. They didn't have this massive drop-off. They went from 55 wins to 53 wins and still made the Eastern Conference Finals. And some people believe were robbed of a chance to play in the NBA Finals, even with Michael Jordan being gone. So those were the things we knew about Scottie Pippen. The Last Dance told us, they built him up. They told us his story about how he wasn't that great of a basketball player at first, about how he went to Central Arkansas as like the team manager, and then about how he grew 6-8 inches over one summer, how he joins the team and becomes a star and turns going from a Central Arkansas manager to a first-round pick in the NBA draft. But they built him up, tear him down, signing bad contracts, jealous of teammates, getting off-season surgeries, doing selfish moves. These are things we didn't know about Scottie Pippen. These are things Scottie Pippen probably wanted to keep in the 90s. Probably would have preferred you not to have mentioned it during this Last Dance documentary, especially when Michael Jordan wasn't even there when a lot of this took place, besides the contract. When Michael Jordan wasn't there when the Tony Kukoc thing went down. So that is very, very interesting. So we'll have to see what's next from Scottie. As Kevin Durant called him, Scott Pippen. What is next from Scottie, and what is going to be the next move? Leave your thoughts in the chat. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Once again, I'm Jeff Lightsy Jr. at the Black Boss Channel. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. We're here every weekday morning, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to tune in. Thank you guys for listening. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out, and I will see you next time. Peace.